Not all heroes wear capes, but what if I told you that many of our heroes day to day live in our communities? They work in our companies and businesses, and they're our friends and neighbors. That is the mission of the American Red Cross, to equip these everyday hometown heroes and to honor them as well. Peter Brown, the executive director of the American Red Cross's Pennsylvania Rivers chapter, joins us tonight to talk about the organization, their mission, and how they plan to honor their heroes. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. The American Red Cross, an organization everybody across the country knows and is familiar with, but they do so much more than just respond to emergencies. One of the big parts of their mission is to equip the heroes that live in our communities day in and day out, and to honor them as well. Peter Brown joins us tonight to talk about that mission. He's the executive director of the American Red Cross's Pennsylvania Rivers chapter. Peter, welcome to Face the Issues. Thank you so much for being here.
Very excited to be here. Love the opportunity to talk about the Red Cross and what we do. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming and for the work that you all do. We're going to get into that here in a moment. I want to start with the question I think every one of our viewers is asking right now. The Pennsylvania Rivers chapter. What is the Pennsylvania Rivers chapter and why is it called that?
So we get that question a lot. Several times over the last, I'll say 10 or 15 years, the Red Cross has done realignments, really with the goal of making sure that we're making the best possible use of our donor dollars. So in 2019, we started on a plan to realign chapters in Pennsylvania. And the way the counties lined out, my chapter now includes Lehigh, Northampton, Berks, Schuylkill, Columbia, Montour, Northumberland, Snyder, and Union. Okay. So in creating the name, we tried to think of something that would unify those counties, and it was actually one of our longtime volunteers who said, how about Pennsylvania Rivers? We have the Delaware and the Lehigh and the Schuylkill and the Susquehanna. All of those rivers have played a major part in the development of these areas, so it seemed like a good fit. And as you noted, it's also a great way to start a conversation because people say, well, why is that?
Yeah, it is. The first time I saw it, I thought, well, that can't be right, because I'm thinking Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And so my first thought was, I have to ask Peter why it's called Pennsylvania Rivers. To your point, it is an intriguing name. It's very clever, I think. It's certainly a great conversation starter. Let's talk about the Red Cross.
Yep.
I think every person in America knows the name Red Cross, right? And internationally, the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, well-known organization. Every time there's an emergency, we see the Red Cross show up. But the Red Cross does so much more than that. Can you talk about the mission, the purpose of the American Red Cross?
So that's very true, and it's one of the things, I've been on staff with the Red Cross almost 10 years, and most people think that we come out when there's a fire or a hurricane, and then the rest of the time we just hang out at the chapter and drink coffee and wait for something terrible to happen. We're a 24/7, 365 organization. Disaster relief is the original mission of the Red Cross. It's what we were chartered for by Congress, to deliver disaster relief to the American public. That dates back to the early 1900s. Wow. But our history also is tied to the work of Clara Barton, the founder of the American Red Cross. She was known as the angel of the battlefield in the Civil War because she started providing aid to soldiers on both sides, and at the end of the war was instrumental in helping families find out about their missing soldiers, whether they were in prisoner of war camps. So that started a long tradition and partnership. So one of our major functions is under our programs we call Service to the Armed Forces. So through that program, we do many things. We provide emergency communication support for active duty military. So if you're here in the Lehigh Valley and you have a son or a daughter that's stationed in Afghanistan and there's a reason, maybe there's a family health emergency or something to celebrate where you need to be able to get a message to that soldier in the field, and there may be a need for that soldier to come home. The Red Cross facilitates that communication, vets the incidents for the military, and then facilitates the conversation, and will also support the individual coming home. We also ensure that they're able to get safely back, and we provide casework services to the soldier and to their family after that incident has been resolved. And that's been a part of our mission for over 100 years. Locally, we've shifted a lot more, and this is a program we do across the country. We're focusing a lot more on disaster preparedness, helping communities be ready and families to be ready to deal with an emergency. Here in the Lehigh Valley, we respond to over 100 home fires a year. So what we've done over the last 7 years is we've initiated 3 programs to help with community preparedness. In the community, we deliver a program called Sound the Alarm, Save a Life, where we partner with local fire companies and local volunteers, our Red Cross volunteers and community volunteers. We go door to door, sharing home fire safety information, checking smoke alarms, and installing smoke alarms free of charge in homes that need them. So since 2015, we've installed over 7,000 alarms just in the Lehigh Valley. Across the country, the number is well in excess of 1 million, and we've documented over 1,500 lives saved with that program, where a family had a fire after the alarms had been installed and everyone in the family was able to get out safely. So that's a program that has really proven to be very effective, and it helps us stay engaged with the community when there's not a disaster. Along with that, we now have programming that we can deliver to school children, young adults, and seniors, going from pre-K all the way up through a lot of the presentations we do at senior centers. So these are programs for children. For the youngest children, it's called Pedro the Preparedness Penguin, and it's a sort of a coloring book driven presentation on what to do with your family if there's a fire or an emergency. Then we have a program called the Pillowcase Project that we do for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade age students. Similar material, just made more age appropriate. And then we do a lot of general home fire preparedness training, disaster training, and hands-only CPR training with middle school, high schools, and a lot of adult organizations. And a lot of that focus is on seniors. They more frequently may have mobility issues, and it's really important that they are well prepared in the event of a disaster.
Yeah, Peter, you said something that was really, really fascinating. The idea of the Red Cross sometimes has this, people think it's just when these natural disasters or national disasters occur, right? I always joke that it's kind of like Michael Bublé at Christmas, right? It's the only time he ever shows up. And it's like, oh, there's a hurricane, there's a natural disaster, and Red Cross is now going to show up. But you brought up a fascinating point, which is all like these home fires, right? Or situations where senior citizens, suddenly something goes on and we need to make sure people are CPR trained. These are disasters.
Yes.
It's just, they're not disasters that always register on the news because it's not Hurricane Harvey or another, a war situation. But these are everyday disasters that the Red Cross responds to.
Yeah, we're able to do that because of the incredibly dedicated volunteers that we have. But across our 9 counties, we respond to over 500 fires a year.
Wow.
And across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the number's probably 4 or 5 times that, not counting the Philadelphia area. Metro Philadelphia, not unusual to have a year with 1,000 or more incidents.
Sure.
So that requires a lot of training. It requires a lot of dedication from our volunteers. Our disaster response volunteers really work almost like volunteer firefighters. They sign up to be on call. They will go out anytime during the day or night that we need to be out and connect with clients, and they provide the immediate relief. So a family knows that they're going to have food, shelter, access to clothing, access to medications if that's what they need. These are all things that we provide the training for our volunteers to be able to do.
Yeah. You brought up an interesting approach about the Red Cross. I mean, we always think of the respond to part, but you talked about first step is prepare for.
Right.
Then you respond to, but then also the recover from. And, and this idea, you talked about Claire Barton, the angel in the battlefield, the founder of the Red Cross, and how she was helping people find their loved ones after the war was over. Can you talk a little about what recover from looks like today?
So that's really interesting. So when we talk about our disaster work specifically, we talk about a cycle of disaster. Preparedness, response, recover, then it happens again. And obviously in communities that have had a disaster, we help them through recovery. They're much more interested in then focusing on helping their community be more prepared for the next one.
Fair enough.
But that cycle for recovery really gets into a couple of things. We are very, very adamant about honoring donor requests. So for example, with Superstorm Sandy, we generated over $300 million in support that was designated to help people impacted by Sandy. We did not spend all that money in the immediate 2 or 3 months following the incident. So we started working with other community partners, provided funding for housing, provided funding for people who were struggling with PTSD. Yeah. Lots of programs that are beyond our scope, but where the resources that we were provided can be used for the long-term benefit of the people that were affected by the storm. So it's the combination of honoring donor intent, and also we've become much more effective as an organization in collaborating and using our name visibility and our ability to generate funds to help support the overall health of a community that's recovering from a disaster.
Yeah. You said earlier, as you were answering that there are community partners for the Red Cross.
Yes.
Different organizations. I assume a lot of these are not as national or international as you guys are, that they're based in the local community you're trying to serve.
So it's a mix of both. Mm-hmm. So nationally, we work regularly on disaster scenes with the Salvation Army. Mm-hmm. The Southern Baptists, they have sort of developed a niche as a food preparer. Yes. So they have massive, like, tractor trailer kitchens. So we tend to focus with them on, we do the distribution, so our emergency response vehicles and our volunteers. Salvation Army will do a little bit of both. But here locally, we've really tried over the last several years to build much stronger relationships with locally based nonprofits. In 2019, there was a really significant row home fire, an explosion in Allentown, where we wound up having 10 buildings essentially be destroyed. Wow. And through that, we partnered with Promise Neighborhood of the Lehigh Valley, Ortiz Arc Foundation, Unidos, and there are several others. These are much smaller, more locally driven organizations, but they're way more effective than we are at times in connecting with the local needs and being trusted by the local people. Yeah. So they help us by sharing with their community, their neighborhoods, that the Red Cross is a good partner, and they provide resources, translation services sometimes. It really enables us to do a better job of meeting all of the needs that a community and a family might have after something like that.
That's a really neat mutual relationship where they give you the backing, the credibility necessary to be in that community, but you give them that credibility nationally.
Yeah, and there are things we don't do. We don't collect clothing or distribute furniture, but there are a lot of locally based organizations that do that. So being able to partner in that way really helps us be a part of a coalition that can meet all the needs that a family has for response and recovery. It's also a lot of fun. They're great people. I've made a lot of really good friends, and we've built some really strong partnerships here in the Lehigh Valley, and are looking to take that same approach and move it across the new counties that are in our chapter.
Yeah, it truly takes a village.
Yes.
Peter, we're going to cut the break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Heroes Breakfast that your chapter does, American Red Cross does. So
terrific.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. My guest again is Peter Brown, Executive Director of American Red Cross's Pennsylvania Rivers Chapter. Peter, thank you again for being here. I wanted to shift now to talk about something that the Red Cross loves to do, which is honor our everyday hometown heroes.
Yes.
And you here in this region, in the Rivers Chapter, you do this by having something called a Heroes Breakfast.
Right.
I know you've got some coming up, but can you tell us what the Heroes Breakfast is?
Sure. So this year we're having the Pennsylvania Rivers Chapter Celebration of Heroes, and that's going to include 2 events. This will be the 19th year for our Berks County Heroes Breakfast, and that's just been a tremendously successful program with a lot of great community support. So this year, for the first time, we decided to add a Lehigh Valley Heroes Breakfast. So the Berks Breakfast is on March 10th. The Lehigh Valley Breakfast is on March 16th. We're very excited about this, and it's a way to really expand that program and recognize just amazing people.
And the ever-talented Karen Millette from WFMZ, I know, is emceeing. You said she's been emceeing this for years now.
Yeah, I mean, Karen was a longtime board member of what was then our Berks County chapter, and was instrumental in encouraging WFMZ to become the sponsor. So they've been doing that for us. One of the great benefits of that is that they create really nice video stories about the heroes. They get shown on the local news. It really gives a very special feel to the event and to the heroes to be able to see and get that kind of recognition. So we're now expanding that, and Karen will also be hosting our Lehigh Valley event. We're thrilled.
That's fantastic. Karen is one of the best in our business. You very, very fortunate to have her on board. Let me ask you about this. You mentioned the stories that you say they get highlighted on the news and so forth. What are some of the stories, and who are these heroes that you are highlighting and sharing their stories?
Yep. So we have categories for nominating, and some years we get lots of nominees in certain categories and some not so many.
Sure.
We also added categories during COVID to recognize the community heroes who were doing amazing things. So a lot of these revolve around life-saving incidents. So last year in Reading, we had an amazing story of what could have been a tragic day at East Penn Manufacturing and instead became an opportunity to honor some really wonderful people. Two separate incidents over the course of a shift, two of their workers suffered pretty significant heart attacks.
Wow.
Adjacent employees who had completed CPR and first aid training, that's one of the things that they really stress, started providing immediate support, and then their emergency response team within the company activated, wound up being a team of, I think we honored 10 or 12 individuals that were a part of one or the other. Some of them worked on both, but the end result was their preparedness and the quickness of their response, and that they had employees right in those work areas that were trained. Both of those lives were saved, and both of those individuals have returned to work.
Wow.
So being able to honor someone like that not only shares a wonderful story, but it helps us emphasize the importance of being prepared. Mm-hmm. No one takes CPR first aid training with the idea that tomorrow I know I'm going to need this, but I might need to use it next week. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not trained, I can't help.
Yeah. Peter, you bring up an interesting point that the whole country, we all remember watching that game, Buffalo-Cincinnati, and what happened to Damar Hamlin. And there's been a lot of talk about how quick that training team was to get out there, begin initiating CPR, getting him into University of Cincinnati's hospital, and just to talk about how that training team saved his life. If it weren't for them, it wouldn't have mattered what they could do at the hospital. And you think in a game like that, of course there's training staff. Of course there's people who are trained in case something like this happens. Yep. But you think of a company like East Penn Manufacturing, and that doesn't always click with us to say, whoa, they're not. Why would they have a training staff, right, on grounds? And your point is, you never know when this might occur. Do you have people who are prepared in order to deal with a situation like this? Yes. We're not all NFL teams. We don't all have these training staffs. Who in our organizations, who at our campuses and our companies is prepared to do this? I
mean, we've honored individuals over the years who were out jogging in a park and an elderly person had a heart attack, just taking a walk that could have been a mile from a parking lot. If that individual who came by had not been trained, that other person wouldn't be here today. Yeah. We've honored teenagers who just were in their neighborhoods and saw smoke coming out of a neighbor's window and went over and no one could respond. They actually saved a family that were succumbing to carbon monoxide poisoning because they were alert and paying attention. So I call them the feel-good events of the year. Yeah. You come in there, you spend an hour, you see wonderful work, you get to hear from Karen, but you just leave feeling so hopeful and excited about what people can do. And for us, it's an honor to be able to recognize them. Almost everyone that we honor tells us that they really didn't do anything special and they would, couldn't you honor somebody else? But they also see the value in allowing us to tell their stories and encouraging others to support, to do the training, then to be willing to step forward and take action when they're in a situation where somebody's life is literally at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, if somebody wants to go, is it too late to register?
Not at all. So with the events coming up on the 10th and the 16th, if you just go to, if you type in Lehigh Valley Heroes Breakfast.org or redcross.org and put in heroes, you will be directed to the website. You can also call our chapter office here in Allentown. It's 610-865-4400, and we can provide the information for you to get online from there. We are also still actively interested in additional sponsors for the events. So if you're a corporation out there and this sounds like the kind of an event that you would like to support, all the proceeds from both events will go directly to supporting mission delivery for the Red Cross in our Pennsylvania Rivers chapter. So the funds are going to be used locally As you've heard, we respond to 300 to 500 incidents a year, so we always have a need for funding and are always looking for individuals and organizations that want to be a part of the Red Cross.
If not this breakfast, what are other ways that people, individual organizations can support the Red Cross's work?
Yeah, so I mean, we are a volunteer-led organization. 90% of our workforce are volunteers.
Wow.
In that 9-county footprint, there are only 3 of us who are full-time in that 9-county. There's about 8 other staff people who support us, but also support other areas. But we have over 500 volunteers in those counties and over 3,000 across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who enable us to deliver our daily mission. I don't personally respond to home fires. I go if they're big or if there's media. But if there's a home fire at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in Bethlehem, it's Red Cross volunteers who have been trained and are able to respond. We could not deliver our mission without the volunteers. If we had to pay for the number of hours that our volunteers put in to benefit the community, we wouldn't be able to exist. So if you want to volunteer with the Red Cross, it's just redcross.org/volunteer. It prompts you to a short profile. You put in your zip code, so it'll sort of connect you to the local. And then we have volunteers and staff who will contact you, talk more about what you're interested in. And we have a need for volunteers in many, many different areas. If your skill is to answer phones and help file paperwork, we do events and we have a lot of things to do that. If you want to get your hands in it and be involved as a disaster responder, you can do that. If you want to be trained so that you can go to Florida and spend 2 weeks after Hurricane Ian and provide direct support on the ground, you can do that from here. And we have volunteers who do all those things and a lot of volunteers who do many of those things.
And this is not just for this chapter, right? This is all over the country.
Yes.
Red Cross is recruiting volunteers all over the country. So redcross.org/volunteer.
Yep.
Yeah. We're going to cut the break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your career. You mentioned earlier, and I want to talk about your why Red Cross. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Peter, thank you again for joining us and for talking about the work that you and your colleagues do at the Red Cross. We close out every segment, every show, by trying to get to know our guests a little bit better. We believe our guests are more than just the issues they work on, the work that they do. You mentioned something earlier that you spent 3 decades in banking.
Yes. Graduated from college with a business degree, wasn't quite sure what to do. Started working with a local community bank and then spent about 29 years working with banks all over Central, Southeastern, and Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania.
Wow. What made you go from banking then to the Red Cross? What led to that transition?
So some of it was, it sort of directly flowed from what a lot of community banks look for, which is to have you get involved with organizations in the community. So when I moved to the Lehigh Valley in 1997, I took the Leadership Lehigh Valley program and I met John Hughes, who was then the director of the Red Cross. We just kind of hit it off. So there were some projects they were working on that my skill set could help. So I said, sure, I'd love to volunteer. Then I wound up being on the board and got more involved. I was a chapter treasurer for 1 year, just made a lot of great friends and really started to get really engaged in the mission. And then in 2012, John decided to take an opportunity to transfer to his hometown. He's still with the Red Cross, but he's in North Carolina. And I was sitting in a meeting with the executive committee and he's telling us this, and I was just thinking, and this little sort of light bulb goes off in the back of my head, and it's like, that I might be interested in doing that. I said, I feel like I have a lot of skills that would cross over well. But I think it might be nice to, at that point I was 51, it'd be great to spend the rest of my career doing something that much more directly was going to help others. So I talked to a couple of board members, decided to apply, and 6 months later was selected to be in this role. And it's been wonderful. 10 years have gone by like a flash. I always tell people, sure, there's still bureaucracy, there's still days when you can't get things done, but at the end of the day, when your head hits the pillow, you've spent that day trying to make a difference and trying to help people in need. And the bonus is being able to work every day with our volunteers. I mean, any corporation you work with, a bunch of the people there are just there because they're getting paid.
Yeah.
These are volunteers. Some of our volunteers volunteer over 2,000 hours a year.
Wow.
That's the equivalent of a full-time job. Yeah. And they do it because they love it and because they care. So being able to support them, I view my role as supporting the volunteers. They don't work for me, I work for them. And our ability to generate funds, to get sponsors, to opportunities like this to be able to spread the word and get people engaged is really what I value. I've had the opportunity to deploy to some of the larger disasters. I spent 4 weeks in Texas after Hurricane Harvey. Yeah. Some of our local volunteers said, you probably shouldn't go to the largest disaster in the last 50 years for your first time. But I spent 28 days there. It's incredibly challenging work, but I felt like I was really using the talents I had been given, the talents I've developed in a way that was really important to me. So I was exhausted, but felt great.
Yeah.
And I just look forward every day to being able to tell people about the Red Cross, get people involved, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity that this change in my career has given me.
Yeah. So looking back, no regrets.
No regrets. Yeah. Wish I'd done it sooner. That would be the only regret.
Yeah. I think that's just a beautiful example. I think so often our society preaches to us about chasing this career, that career. But at the end of the day, you're investing in lives, and there's nothing that lasts longer or is more important.
Yep.
So.
My kids never would remember the name of the bank that I worked for at any given time because it changed a lot. They all know that I work for the Red Cross, and they tell their friends that I work for the Red Cross.
That's beautiful. Peter, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all that you do.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
The pleasure's all ours. Thank you. Again, my guest is Peter Brown. I want to thank him and everybody that works for the American Red Cross in our state and throughout the country for the work that they put in and day out. That is our show for tonight. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you right back here again next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.